Are you sick and tired of the same old legal tech conversations? Do you pine for something new? Hey, me too. Here's the good news. We got something entirely novel just for you and for thousands of other listeners. But forget about that right now. It's just me and you talking. Welcome to the Adventures in Legal Tech podcast. On this show, we explore effective solutions to unique technology issues. After every episode, you'll leave with actionable next steps that you can use to solve the everyday technology problems you're facing in your law practice. It's like Extreme Home Makeover, Law Edition. I'm your host, Jared Correa. I'm the CEO of Red Cave Law Firm Consulting, and I talk tech with lawyers nearly every damn day. Just think of me as a less compelling version of Jackie Gleason, and we'll do all right. Now, everybody says they're going to show you how to use legal tech the right way, but we really mean it. Here's why and how. Each episode will lay out a specific pain point in detail so you'll know exactly where we're headed. Then, after we've laid out the problem, our guests will tell us how to solve it. We've got down-to-earth tech commentary you can understand and then execute on so you can get access to all those amazing technology features you've heard so much about. Now, without further ado, our vexing problem for this week is as follows. Ben Matlock is the chief legal officer at a large company. He doesn't have the bandwidth to appropriately vet technology that would help him to practice more effectively within the construct of the business. Is there out there for him? What should he do? Should he just continue to build spreadsheets until he dies? All right, our guest today is the amazing Joe Borstein, who is the CEO and co-founder of Lex Fusion. Joe, any advice for Ben?
Oh man, he's up shit's creek. What are we gonna do?
He's fucked. All right, we're done. Thanks for coming on.
I think he's got a real problem. No, look, absolutely. I guess on some level, story of my career.
Somewhat, right?
Yeah, I mean that. Obviously that is extremely non-specific, but yeah, I mean it all.
I wanted you to be able to explore the studio space, so go for it.
Oh man, I feel so comfortable already. So no, look, we often, especially in the era of generative AI, talk to general counsel, talk to law firms who just feel in their heart that the whole thing could be better. And, a lot of early conversations just start with exploring what it is that's painful, what it is. And, there's the obvious stuff like money, like it's costing too much money and we need too many people. But often it's not. Often there's simply too much work, or it's confusing, or they're not turning things around fast enough. So, always step one is to really have an open conversation about, what is wrong in that legal department, what they feel could be better, because there are so many technologies and solutions and services out there that you really have to think big first. And then you can start zooming in on ways to make that person's life better.
And you say, interesting. People should talk to each other? Wow.
Once in a while. You don't want to overdo it.
I like how this is why you got to watch this show on video. I like how you're talking about this. You got a big ass printer behind you. It's impressive.
HP, baby. It's the only way to go. I'm not being paid by HP for this endorsement.
Can we go?
I've never printed anything in my life.
It's purely decorative.
Purely decorative. And it looks nice. It looks really nice.
It does. I can vouch for that. Can we go back in time a little bit?
Let's go back.
We've known each other for a little while, and I remember I talked to you when you started Lex Fusion, which I think was 2020-ish.
Yeah, it was 6 months into the pandemic when I was utterly convinced that the thing was clearly going to end any minute now.
No big deal.
And as usual, I was right. It was just just a couple of weeks of sitting at home. We started early in the pandemic. That's right.
So, just give people a little bit of background if they don't know you. Like, what were you doing before?
Absolutely.
Why did you decide to launch the company?
So, a little backstory. Practicing lawyer in New York. I was a litigator, met a wonderful group of people with an early stage company called Pangea 3 back in 2010. Was really excited by what they were doing. I'd been to India many times, and I thought the idea of globalized workforce was really exciting, and was surprised that it hadn't hit our industry. I'd gone back and forth to India a few times with my father, who did a bunch of cross-border work, and took a chance on them. And moving over to the business side from the legal side, it was a legal services / technology company, but they wanted me for the business side. And I thought it honestly just sounded like a fun adventure. I know that this podcast is called Adventures in Something. So, good name. That's really what I thought it would
Not
be.
quite memorable enough to remember what the adventures are in, but we're getting there.
I remembered the adventures part. That's the beginning. Someday I'll get it. No, but I really wanted to have a little bit of a professional adventure. I loved India, and joined up with David Perla and Sanjay Kamani and a couple other former Penn Law grads, which was my alma mater, who were building something different. And honestly, just fell in love with the business of law, technology of law, finding ways to innovate and do things differently. And, just found it super exciting that there was actually a market there. It was a very nascent market compared to what there is now. But, there were ways to make money and ways to I felt like, make the legal world a better place. As, coming from a senior associate where virtually everybody I know found the job lucrative, but excruciating. I don't know any other word for it. Literally excruciating. So, I was there for 11 years. So I'm really going to fast forward 11 years really quickly. But basically over time, my role was to manage a team that helped, implement solutions all across corporate counsel and law firms. Law firms became a bigger part of it over time to, reinvent legal. Often it was alongside technology. This was a services company. And as those 10 years went by, it became more about technology and less about labor arbitrage. Technology, I thought, was even an order of magnitude more interesting. Even last generations of AI had sparks of brilliance, and companies like Kira, which blew me away, and the early e-discovery TAR companies, predictive coding, things like that, should have frankly had a bigger impact than they did. They still did quite well, but I think the legal was not ready to adopt wholesale.
When are they ever, honestly?
I think they are now.
Now's the time. Okay, we'll get back to that. All right, yeah, go ahead.
We should get back to that. But, basically stayed with that company for about 11 years. It was eventually bought by Thomson Reuters, basically upon me getting there, and then bought again by Ernst & Young, where that services team, which was about 1,400 strong at its peak, moved over to EY, which was a more traditional services company. And that's when I was like, I've had a great adventure. I went from the most junior person to one of the more senior people in the company, managing huge chunks of the business, working with about 6 of the Fortune 10 on all sorts of legal, we call it legal outsourcing or legal support, alongside many of the leading technologies. Lex Fusion was my
I like how you were like, fuck it, this can't be worse than law practice. And here we are.
I would like to think I thought of the positive. I was like, fuck it, this might actually be fun.
There you go.
I have refused to believe my whole career the work has to be terrible. And I even do think the law practice, while still terrible, I'll never take that away from big law, is less terrible than it was before. And I do think technology and globalization have taken away some of the terrible and replaced it with plenty of, frankly, more interesting work, because there's no lack of work. We just saw Kennedy's numbers. I've never believed that innovation would take away work. And so far, it still has not. And so, only time will tell. But anyway.
Yeah, Lex Fusion, go ahead. I interrupted
you. I jumped to the other side. So look, I was, I essentially at EY and Pangea 3 at EY, I was a consultant for legal departments, bringing in appropriate technologies, and I switched teams. So the question is a little off base for Lex Fusion, because I consult legal technology companies. Now through that consultation, do I talk with a lot of general counsels? My guess is more than virtually anybody else out there, but I talk to them in a more kind of collaborative, friendly way. Like,
sure.
I do sometimes give advice to the extent that they want to talk about what I've done in the past, but I have now been doing this for about 6 years since I launched the company. We eventually got acquired by Barretts and Burnell. I've never sent an invoice to a general counsel, because simply that's not the side of this marketplace that we decided to charge. Why? Yeah. Because I believe that I had a lot to offer. The companies, having seen a number of them grow, having sat on advisory boards, having also personally invested in a significant number, I've seen them make the same mistakes over and over. And I thought I could get in there and help them grow much faster, much more efficiently, not make the same mistakes, and also hopefully, share in the upside of what I believed could be, billion-dollar businesses. And now we're seeing that happen time and time again. And it
Yeah,
was,
right.
it existed 6 years ago, but it was vanishingly rare. The companies, exceeded,
Yep.
a couple hundred million in market cap or value. You had your practical laws, your relativities, but there were very few of them. We've seen many of our companies have, tremendous exits since then.
Yeah, relatively modern things.
The size of the exits and the
Yeah.
frequency of large exits, not even exits, also, earlier rounds is totally new. And then, of course, I assume we'll get to this too, but with generative AI, the total addressable market of what legal tech can do went absolutely parabolic from, helping at the margins and still being a great little business to now, arguably, depending on who's asking, for certain tasks and for certain straightforward things, doing almost exactly what lawyers do, whether you want to call it practice of law
boy.
or not.
Now
That's a
you're
term
gonna
of
get
art.
yourself in trouble.
Right, exactly. That's a term of art, and the answer is, of course, it cannot. But can it do exactly what lawyers actually spend their time doing? Of course, it can. We all know that. That's not a secret.
Let me-
that
let me
makes
ask
the addressable
you-
market go through the roof. Yeah, go.
Let me ask you about this. Well, I want to get to the generative AI stuff. I want to get to adoption like you teed up. How about the acquisition process? How was that for you? Why did you decide to make that move?
Honestly, I really like the team at Barrett's and Burnell, Mike McNamara, Spencer Barrett's, Kerry Burnell. I liked how much they love the legal industry, that they had a very clear vision, which is similar to mine, that what the industry is becoming more of an asset class, which people, think about how to grow, how to improve their business in a much more traditional C Corp way, whether they're C Corps or not. And that's both legal tech companies and law firms, and even to some extent, corporate counsel. These are large, multi-billion-dollar businesses, and we felt like together we had almost all the pieces you need to help them grow. I'm really interested in what they do. So, I've been helping them attract new clients, and that's all sorts of consulting, marketing, PR, messaging, talent, capital for law firms mostly. And what I do very similarly for, we kind of position ourselves a little more as augmented or outsourced chief revenue officer for
Yep.
legal tech companies. We just saw incredible synergies. Like we could bring their skill sets in digital and marketing and PR and talent to the legal tech world. And I could bring, my skill sets in building a team, go to market, positioning, finding the right buyers, relationships to their clients, the law firms. And sure enough, we're only a year in, but the synergies have been very quick to manifest themselves. So really,
Congratulations.
just kind of traditional, like there was no, nothing magical about it. Like I just thought the businesses were better together.
Let's
I
talk
think
about
that's
something
played out.
magical.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think what you're going to say is,
We're going to talk about fairies, aren't we? Or unicorns. I'm sorry, I
Unicorns.
have a 5-year-old
Well,
daughter. That's what I
oh.
think about most of the time. Yeah.
I get it. Okay, so I think what you're going to tell me.
Also a personal interest.
Unicorn. Who doesn't love a good unicorn? So I think what you're probably going to tell me is like adoption of tech is going up in law, and they're ready for it now because of AI. So let's do the AI thing first.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Like, what is going on with the legal industry and AI from your perspective?
Yeah. I mean, look, for the first time, we're seeing really mature buying cycles. Frankly, we're seeing a world that I really wanted to see 10 years ago, which is the law firms are seeing these technology companies as important part of their future and their business. And they're doing things like, formal pilots and testing and negotiating on pricing and really thinking about it in a centralized way, as opposed to, and I'm sorry, I'm going to curse here, just the absolute clusterfuck that was the buying process. Like a partner would bring
fucking
something to
winging it.
somebody, or a paralegal would see something and beg a partner, and somebody would take somebody else to lunch or dinner. And look, I can play that game. Like I like having dinner with people, but what I really like is like a more mature buying process and seeing these companies as partners and major players in an important industry and suppliers of kind of the raw component parts of what it means to practice law. And I think we're coming much closer to a world where, people are sitting around the table with, CEOs of great companies like Legora, and seeing them as a part of their strategy for being a better version of themselves in 5 or 10 years. They have capital, they have technological experience, they know how to build workflows, They can do things that the law firms cannot, and the law firms can do things that the technology companies cannot. And it just feels much more civilized and mature. I love it. Like, well, it was almost like for a decade, they were almost enemies. And do you know what I mean?
That's probably true. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
It's hard to understand unless you were there, but like it was almost like and it's always been. This is one of my favorite kind of throwaway lines. As I've sat on panels for almost 20 years in legal tech, every freaking panel is about, what does it mean to eat law firms lunch? And I'm like, I think they're having plenty of lunch. I'm looking at their lunch supply, and it seems ample. Like, and year over year, it becomes more ample. And that's always been a joke of mine, because like, I don't see it that way. We have an industry where it's so expensive to do the most basic thing that most of the work simply wasn't getting done. And I think as innovations come out, what we see is people open up their wallet. Their net wallet is now bigger for legal, because smaller amounts of money can solve real problems. When you can solve real problems, people are like, oh, I'll spend more on legal. Like, I'll make the analogy to marketing or art. When generative AI came out, I started spending more money on marketing and more money on artists to build graphics for me and things like that, because the dollar went further and got me something I really wanted to buy. Yeah. Now that makes sense. Like, that clicks for people. Sometimes in other industries, it doesn't necessarily click in law. But as I was running a small, very profitable, but small company, like, I barely opened my wallet to law firms. Now, as the cost per task come down, I believe small companies, which is a huge percentage of the U.S. economy, are going to want lawyers around them more. It's great. They're smart. They have attorney-client privilege. You can tell them anything. Like, there's all kinds of great stuff about having a lawyer at your side if the cost per task is anything approaching reasonable. So I firmly believe it's going to spiral up on both sides. I think legal tech's going to do phenomenal. I think lawyers are going to do phenomenal. And I think there will be, we have a law-thick world, right? Like, we have a world where there's more laws every year. It's more globalized, which means you're butting into different jurisdictions, different legal regimes. And I think it just becomes a bigger and bigger part of the global economy.
This is so positive, Joe. Like, everything's rainbows and unicorns. What a time to be alive.
It's the first day of spring, isn't it?
Maybe. I don't know.
This is my happiest day. Yeah, it's
weather's warming up. All right, so let me ask you this other.
Let me pause you before you say that. Like, has that not, like, I've been saying this for 15 years. Has that not played out?
You've been this positive 15 years. I'm impressed.
Legal tech has become a humongous industry, as I predicted, true. And law firms are doing great.
Yeah, I would agree with both those statements.
Yeah, so they've changed a little bit. I'm not going to say that there hasn't been change. I've never claimed that legal tech wouldn't change the industry. It absolutely will. But this idea that it will like collapse legal, I think is nonsense. And I think generation after generation of technology and services have proven that, in that, like, they've come online, they've reduced the time of certain tasks, whether it was 15 years ago with research, then e-discovery, drafting,
M&A diligence. For sure.
Yeah, M&A. Is M&A not doing well? Like, because diligence got faster? No, because the services that law firms actually provide is extremely valuable. And it's going to continue to be extremely valuable.
Why do you think law firms are so into AI when they haven't necessarily jumped on prior technologies?
AI is so hot right now. Why this? That's a very good question. And I do think there's a pretty logical answer.
Okay.
Those other technologies did not bleed into their everyday life. So everybody used ChatGPT. Yeah, ChatGPT was the fastest growing technology ever, period. And so what that means is virtually everybody, be they a lawyer, business person, whatever, use them very quickly. It is a technology of language. It can write and it can read. If you want to put those in air quotes, fine. But essentially, it can write and it can read.
That's
enough. Exactly what lawyers do, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what they do. So they're like, holy shit, this is exactly what I do. Maybe this could make my life better. Whereas, tell me exactly how you use, and sorry if people on the phone are not e-discovery nerds, but continuous active learning. Tell me how you use continuous active learning in your day-to-day life. You don't. You never did. It had no, so it didn't exist in other places. They had no familiarity. Here, everybody's using, some either Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or all three in their personal lives. Their business people are using it. It's honestly fun to use. Like, I think we're all having fun with it, right? Like, it's solving our
Grandmas,
personal
kids,
problems.
everybody.
Yeah, it's great. I told my dad, who's still practices law, he's 87.
Good for
I was
him,
like,
man.
yeah, totally. I was like, I don't usually bother you with this legal tech stuff, but honestly, I think you'd love generative AI. Like, I think this is one that you'd really enjoy. And his response was, "Oh, I'm using the AI. Yeah, no, I'm using it. I got it. I got it on here." And he shows me his phone. I'm like,
That's funny.
and it turned out he was using Perplexity, which is
Oh,
a little
amazing.
little terrifying. But I was like, let me give you some guardrails on how to use it.
Yeah.
But like, it's fun technology. So I really do think it's different. And then the way the media handled it as well, because this is a technology of language.
Right.
If some of the earliest articles about things that would impact address legal, because it was freaking obvious to everybody that, if you write and read a lot, okay, which professions write and read a lot? Duh, law, right?
Yeah.
And then, the second people used RAG and they saw you could retrieve ideas. So I think law was one of the first things people turned to. In our experience, and we were working for Casetext, which was eventually acquired by Thomson Reuters, was one of our big clients at the time. We were shareholders in it, and they had very early access to ChatGPT. So we were under a very strong NDA before ChatGPT even went public, and it was just mind blowing. Also, they weren't stupid over there at OpenAI. They saw that they should give access. Harvey was the other company at the time that had early access to it. They saw that legal would be a huge power user of this technology, even though at the time it was maybe a little bit early. Yeah, I mean, it was ready for prime time, but it was just at the brink of being ready to really go live.
It's funny.
So I think that's why.
Well, it's funny. With your dad, I knew AI was going to be a thing when my mom texted me and she was like, "Have you heard of ChatGPT?" I'm like, "Oh, it's on now."
It's on. Yeah.
Let's turn in another direction here. I've got a lot of lawyers talking to me about the influence of private equity in legal with law firms and this notion of MSOs. What are your thoughts on that? Are people panicked about it? Is that going to be a good thing for the legal industry?
Why would they be panicked?
I think if you talk to lawyers, they're like, "Uh-oh, like I can't run my little law firm shop anymore on my own."
I have not seen any panic. I think it is just becoming mainstream. I think I would be curious to know whether the audience even knows what an MSO is.
I think some people don't. So if you want to do a little, this is what it is, go for it.
Oh, now you're trying to make me do it. No way.
I don't want to do it.
Tricky.
Hold on, let me look it up on ChatGPT.
Right, no, let me do. I'm gonna do my best, but I reserve the right to refine this.
Fair. Yes.
This definition. MSO is a managed service organization. Essentially, it's a corporation, not a law firm, that runs the business of a law firm. It is a way for non-lawyers to invest in a little bit of a roundabout way in the business of law, and in theory, create a better mousetrap and a more appealing. I think if done right, it is a more appealing place for lawyers to practice law because there's professional management that has skin in the game and is building a better mousetrap than lawyers since time immemorial, at least in the U.S., have had to run both the business of the law firm, which is substantial number of employees, technology stack, facilities, things like that, have absolutely nothing to do with the training you get in law school or, coming up as an associate. So, totally new skill set. Where at least in theory, someone now that could be a lawyer also. Lawyers are certainly capable of doing any of those things, but having been both on the business side and legal side of the world, you have to learn new stuff, and it takes a lot of focus and time and effort.
That's well said. I think that was pretty good.
It was good. Okay. You can take out my caveats then and just roll with it.
I liked it.
So basically the idea is private equity or other just, C Corp owners, Silicon Valley as well, will build, basically houses, corporations designed to house lawyers and essentially law firms that will have, and it will be in those law firms that they house where attorney-client privilege will live and all those special magical powers we get bestowed upon us by the court of law, right? Where we get to wear our wizard robes.
Wait, do you have a wizard robe? I never got mine.
By the way, I got a power of attorney recently, and I felt like I already am an attorney, and it should be called an even more power of attorney for me. but they just still call it a power of attorney, which I think is somehow lacking. Anyway, I really should have just failed completely as a stand-up comic instead of succeeding.
Absolutely.
That would have been so much fun.
Stand-up comedy, screenwriting, you could have done it all.
I could still do it. I would have failed at it, but I would have,
This is pretty good. I'm enjoying myself.
I still have a chance to fail at something epically like stand-up comedy. So where were we? Okay, so I don't think it's scary, and I don't think I have not sense fear. I think most people don't really understand it. They're like, how can how can organizations outside have ownership in law firms? And the truth is, nobody really. There's only been a few successful MSOs. It is still very nascent. There's still a lot of I think ethical and practical ambiguity into how they're going to be pulled off. That being said, major law firms are definitely talking to their bankers about it. They're definitely talking to private equity firms, and Silicon Valley is definitely spinning up. And I am talking to a few of them right now. Basically, tech teams, basically young tech teams that are trying to build it on a technological foundation. There's also lawyers that are trying to build it on a legal foundation, and there's MBAs that are trying to build it on kind of a balanced business. Now, all of them are going to have to do all three, but I think people are coming at it from slightly different points of view. I think overall it will probably be positive with some real failures in it. But I feel like we have to get over as an industry the fact that the safety is the protectionism. I mean, I know we do have to protect clients. That's very important. And the ethical rules are very important, but we have to try new business models. There's some happy medium between, unfettered capitalism. Let's freaking try everything, which I don't believe in here. And what we have now, which is you can try literally nothing. You must have a crevasse style pyramid, and you must, that's not an amazing model. It's okay. It pays really well for the partners at a handful of firms, but it is not serving justice. We all know that. It's not reaching most people. And honestly, even the people in it, I was reading an article this morning that, even AmLaw partners, something like 60% of them are pleased with their profession. That's pretty sick for how much they're getting paid. You would think it would be high.
You would think.
The abstract, a person with a job paying on average $2 million a year and often far more.
Yeah, you think the job satisfaction would be good.
Yeah, maybe a 90% or no. It's still pretty low. And then amongst associates, counsel, and non-equity partners, it's just very low. So, and the clients aren't ecstatic. So we have to try better. We have to try different ways. Some of them are going to succeed. Some of them are going to fail. I think we need to double down on the ethics of the practice of law, as opposed to the ethics of the business of law. And maybe allow for some. It's done all over the world other than the US.
Except for here. Yeah.
Except for here. So it's not like this is wacky, unprecedented stuff, right? And with technology able to achieve more and more, it's, again, the TAM, the total addressable market, the ability of business to solve problems for legal is going up. And, as the potential becomes bigger, I think our ability to hold it back with just it's not the way we've done it before is going to crumble, because we have too many problems in the industry and we have too many potential solutions that are screaming out at us.
Give me 2 minutes on your impressions of Legal Week this year and the move to the Javits Center, which people were all up in arms about.
Sure, they were up in arms.
People were angry. Yeah.
They were angry. Have they been to the Hilton?
I believe some have.
I mean, the lobby of the Hilton is where dreams go to die. So I'm not saying I love the Javits Center, but we are starting from an unbelievably low bar here.
So improvement for you. You're that glass half full guy again.
I think it was a net improvement. I'm a Midtown. I like Midtown, so Hilton is more central, more convenient for a lot of things. But man, that was a rough space. I thought it was a little bit better. No one believes this about me, and you're probably going to make fun of me and say I'm lying, but I hate conferences. This is not.
Oh, I'm right there with you. I'm not laughing at you over that.
Okay, good. Yeah. People are like, oh, you love it. You smack everyone's back. I'm like, I'm trying to get them away from me.
I go home and weep after.
It's actually a form of assault. I'm actually trying to hurt them.
Right. I'm hitting people.
That's a joke again. That was a joke. I want to make that I'm not assaulting anyone. But no, I can't stand conferences. But at least it was in, Javits is a nice space. I was impressed with vendor area would be much nicer. I think at some point we're going to have to admit we hate commerce and legal, that it is a freaking trade show, and people got to spend more time on that floor talking to the just absolutely brilliant people that are starting these companies. The founders on the floor are unbelievable, and frankly, in my view, they have been for a long time. But we are getting the best people out of Stanford and Wharton and Harvard, and like coming into legal, and like the amount of talent on that floor of companies is just incredible. I think maybe a little bit less us talking to each other on panels and a little bit more talking to the people that are building the future of law and taking risks. I think if they do that, it will be a lot more fun.
Way to put a bow on it, Joe. Thank you. This was a lot of fun. I was having fun chatting with you. Thanks for coming on.
Same. Anytime.
All right, everybody.
Anytime, especially if it is the first beautiful, bright first day of spring.
All right. You're coming on every first day of spring from now on.
Every first
All right,
day
everybody.
Of spring. Call it a tradition. Thanks, Jared.
Today we spoke with Joe Borstein from Lex Fusion. For more from Joe and Lex Fusion, visit lexfusion.com, LEXFUSION, lexfusion.com. Join us for our next episode when I'll tell you about that time I taught Tony Iommi a Black Sabbath, the Devil's Chord, thus creating heavy metal, or we'll just do another legal tech Q&A, I suppose. All right, come back next time, everybody. Take care.